Hey there, what if the thing you have been most ashamed of, the wound you have spent years on healing, the story that still really stings, is actually the most valuable thing you have to offer the world at this time? I want to show you something in the Astro Data that will make this feel less like a spiritual platitude and more like a structural fact for you. And if you want to dig into this a little bit deeper with a community of coaches, healers, creatives, and artists doing the same work, we are over on School at Business Astrology Hub. See the link in the description. So, 3 of the 10 wealthiest people on the planet share a single astrological placement. Not their sun sign, not their rising, not their Jupiter, but Chiron. Yeah, the wounded healer. And what they did with that wound is exactly what I want to talk to you about today. Welcome back to Cosmic Cash Flow. I'm Carolina, and this is the series where we decode the astrological patterns behind extraordinary wealth and translate them into practical wisdom for coaches, healers, creators, and artists who are building heart led businesses. So, yeah. So let's get into that. But first, before we dive in, let me make myself a little bit bigger here. Yeah, because you want to see all the pretties here, right? So speaking of Quest Mystic and the business astrology hubs on School, if you're a coach, a healer, creator, or artist building a heart-led business, this is your community. We combine astrology with real business strategy, and every week we meet live to help you grow with clarity and cosmic timing. Ranked number 44 now in spirituality category with over 500 members, and we're going to get bigger because that's my mission. So come find your people. Link is in the description. Now let's get into Chiron. So, what is Chiron? Chiron is a minor planet, a centaur body discovered in 1977, orbiting between Saturn and Uranus. In astrology, it's called the Wounded Healer. It's named after the mythological centaur Chiron, who could heal others but could not heal himself. And so, in your natal chart, Chiron by sign and house shows the area of life where you carry your deepest wound and your deepest wisdom, because it is where you have been hurt, where you have been healed, or hopefully you have been healing, and where your most credible teaching lives. Because you cannot really fake Chiron. You have lived it or continue to do so. So the sign shows the nature of the wound. The house shows the area or the arena of life where it plays out. Together, they point directly at your most powerful heartfelt offer, I believe. So, what does this look like? So, one of the things that I did in this whole cosmic cash flow astrology the world of things, I went down the rabbit hole and looked at the charts, right? And so I want to be really like precise here. Elon Musk, Larry Page, Sergey Brin all have Chiron in Aries, 17, 16, 20 degrees retrograde. And these 3 individuals overall, right, in the generalities of Chiron and Aries, this is the right to exist and be a pioneer. That is the wound, okay? So the right to exist, pioneer, take up space. Those the 3. Whereas Warren Buffett, Jean Jan, both of those have the wound of being of worth, resources, and embodiment, which is interesting because Warren Buffett is does finances, and I know I'm really messing up this person's name, but they began their wealth in providing water. So then we have Bernard Arnault, which is a Chiron in Capricorn, along with Bill Gates, both around authority, legacy, and structure as their wound. And what's interesting is because Bernard has built an entire, legacy brand, right? Like Louis Vuitton, you couldn't get more to like authority and legacy around that. And obviously Bill Gates with his Microsoft and other adventures out there as well. And then we also have Jeff Bezos with Chiron and Pisces around boundaries, the solutions and service, which is also interesting in the path that he opened up with his Amazon, and then Mark Zuckerberg with Gemini, not surprising because he does a lot of what he's been doing with Facebook, a platform for communication. And then Larry Ellison, Virgo, perfectionism, worthiness, and services. This is the guy behind Oracle, and you need to have that when you're building such a big, massive thing. So we have three people up there, and six signs represented. And so Chiron and Aries, this is a transit we're actually currently living in at this time between 2018 and 2027. So the strongest ones here is Musk, Page, and Bryn, and a 3 out of 10, right? That's a for me when you're doing statistically, you're right. You're looking at like what are the similarities, and these individuals had the same wound. And I mentioned to somebody recently that Chiron transits Aries and Pisces the longest, so more people will have that wound. Okay, and this is a wound around existing boldly, to initiate, to take up space without apology, to pioneer something that has never existed before. And people with Chiron and Aries often carry a deep early wound around their right to act, to be seen as a leader, to go first, to be the one who starts things. I have Chiron Aries. Maybe you do too. Many people of my, I would say my, yeah, generation has that because we're in the Gen X type of era, and Chiron and Aries last for a while. So look at what these three actual did, right? They brought about and funded in companies that didn't really exist in the past. Yes, Musk has founded or funded companies in the electric vehicles, land, space travel, and neural interfaces, but the vehicles piece, while it had existed, it didn't really get pushed like he did, really bringing forth a new pioneering outlook and approach. And same with Page and Bryn. They have built an infrastructure through which the entire world access information. They didn't wait for permission to pioneer. Instead, they're using this energy to turn whatever wound they feel around being seen and being a leader into a mission. And well, Elon Musk, he's more of like the outsider in all of this because he's not well, let me say this. His wound is being the outsider who may feel he needs to prove the right to exist, whereas Larry Page might be the individual that feels like the quiet pioneer who has changed how humanity thinks, and Sergey is that immigrant, right, who has rewrote the rules of access. So three people, the same wound, with a lot of money behind it. So I talked about Chiron being in Aries at this time. We're all in this, okay? This is part of a transit that we're experiencing from 2018 to 2027. And so we're at the final stretch, and while we're almost there, but you are in the middle of it all, right? We're almost done with the transit, but we have been doing this work as a collective for a while. So whatever wound those individuals have been experiencing it at the collective. All right. The wound around the right to exist, to be seen, to act boldly, to take up space. And wherever Aries is in your chart, that's what has been kicked up. So if you're a coach, a healer, a creator, an artist, this is your moment. The collective is healing the exact wound that your work likely addresses. The people who need you are not waiting for someone who has it all figured out. They're waiting for someone who has lived what they're living and made it through. So Chiron, let's go through each of these signs. What does that look like for you? So, I covered a lot about Chiron and Aries. This is the lived experience of having to fight for your right to exist and the unshakable confidence that comes from winning that fight, right? When you get into your Chiron work, you begin to heal that part. So, you should be able to start seeing, like, this is what I've been really working on. And by the way, I can help you from that perspective. Your offer is for people who are afraid to begin, afraid to be seen, and afraid to take up space, which is funny because a lot of people who gravitate towards me is exactly for that, because I am showing through my own journey, my own work, how this can come about. Chiron and Taurus, this is a deep understanding of scarcity, worth, and the body, and the ability to help others rebuild their relationship with abundance. Taurus being ruled by Venus. So we're talking about not just like Venusian things that are about luxury, tactile things, but also like The body. Perhaps you're a massage therapist that have gone through many stages to get to where you're at. So your offer is for people who undercharge, who don't value themselves, who give too much, who don't believe their gifts have monetary value. This is very typical for Chiron in Taurus. Now, Chiron in Gemini, now we're talking about the communication, the mind, a mind that had to work twice as hard to be heard, and the gift of communicating complexity with uncommon clarity. So, your offer is for people who have a message they can't articulate, a story they're afraid to tell. And Chiron and Cancer, now we're talking about mother and nurturing wounds. So a heart that learns safety from the inside and from the inside out, and the capacity to hold space for others' deepest vulnerabilities. Your offer is for people healing their relationship with belonging, family, and home. Now we have Virgo and Leo, the experience of being unseen and the radiance that emerges when you finally choose to be witnessed. Your offer is for people who hide their gifts, who shrink from the spotlight, the exhaust, like shine, 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 and show them how to shine. Now, Chiron and Virgo, this is the exhaustion of never being enough and the mastery that comes from turning that standard into a genuine craft. Your offer is for people trapped in the loop of not ready yet and finally just get pushing them over so that they can actually move forward with their abundant stories. Now, Libra through Pisces, the experience of relationships that didn't hold and the wisdom to help others create partnerships that actually do. That is Chiron in Libra. Your offer is for people having difficult relationships or trying to build collaborative businesses. Chiron and Scorpio, initiation through loss, betrayal, or transformation, and the power to guide others through their own underworld. Your offer is for people in the deepest, darkest chapter of their lives. You have been there and have come back. Chiron and Sagittarius, a faith that was tested, broken, and rebuilt, and the ability to help others find meaning when the map just runs out. So your offer is for people who have lost their belief in a bigger life. Chiron in Capricorn, the weight of responsibility placed too early and the authority that comes from having carried it anyway. Whew. Yeah, right? Your offer is for people who are afraid of their own ambition, who feel like success is for other people. And guess what? Arnold and Gates, two of the wealthiest people alive, have this placement. Chiron in Aquarius, the experience of being the outsider, the misfit, the too much, and the vision to build communities where others finally belong. Your offer is for people who have never felt like they fit. You know how that feels, so help them feel like they can do that themselves. Chiron in Aries, a sensitivity so vast once it felt like a curse, and the capacity to channel it into healing, art, and transcendence. Your offer is for people who are highly sensitive, who absorb everything, and who need help navigating the spiritual and emotional overwhelm of being alive. And guess what? This is Jeff Bezos, and his entire empire is built on the promise of frictionless ease for overwhelmed people, right? Like you get into the Amazon and he has built multiple venues in there. So you're just part of the process of Amazon, right? Yeah, I'm sure you've seen that. And so, how do you go about this? Your mirror, the three questions that you need to think about is the following. First, where do you feel like an imposter, even though you have experience? Okay, this is your with this is where your Chiron is hiding, hiring. That feeling is Chiron. Okay, that is the wound that is also the credential. Second, you have survived that something that others only read about in books. And that knowledge, that experience, that survival is your curriculum. Your clients are not looking for someone who studied things from theory. They're looking for someone that has genuinely done something and authentic in their path, who has lived that chapter. Third, where does your sensitivity feel like a liability instead of an asset? That sensitivity is your superpower. The wound that made you feel too much is the same wound that makes you the right person to hold space for the person who feels too much. So find your Chiron. If you don't have it memorized, pull up your chart on astro.com. Look right now and see what that is. And it will be there. You'll see a little key that looks like it's just a key with a circle at the bottom and the key at the top. Yeah, look at the sign, look at the house. That is your gift to the collective. All right. So, how do we proceed? What is the activation? So, move my face. This here is what Chiron looks like, and that right there is Aries symbol, just in case you're wondering. All right. So, write down your Chiron and the house, then complete this sentence out loud if you can. I have personally lived the experience of, that's your Chiron wound. Because of that, I can help people who are, that's experiencing that wound. That's what you put in there. Two, and then the next part is what you know now is possible on the other side. So you fill in those three parts and you have a sentence that is your offer, a lived experience translated into a promise. The three steps on this slide are the architecture. Take a snapshot. All right, save it and then come back to this. Share this with all your friends, please. All right, because the first step, the wound, is the connection. Your audience doesn't buy your perfection, they buy your understanding of their pain. The moment they feel understood, the sale has already been made. The healing is the method, the specific steps you took to survive, to become the roadmap you sell. Your healing journey is your curriculum. And the third step, the last step, is the wisdom, is the offer. All right. You aren't selling coaching, you aren't selling healing, you are selling the destination you have reached. That is what makes it unfakeable. All right. That is genuine to you. The billionaires didn't build their empire by hiding their wounds. They built them by going so deep into whatever they're going in their minds and their lives, and that they emerged on the other side with something the world needed and, has created more than that. So you have done the same work, my friend. The question is whether you are willing to let it be seen. And so the wound is not the flaw. Remember, the wound is not the flaw in your design. It is the design that you need to work around and work and understand. Your Chiron placement isn't a mistake to be fixed. Okay, this is not about fixing. This is about understanding ourselves, healing parts that are really feel like we can't hold on to because it is no longer helpful. All right. It is the specific measure required to create the diamond only you can offer. The world does not need another coach, another guide, another healer, and blah, blah, blah. It really needs really something that you can only deliver, that only you has actually survived and lived. That's what people are looking for. Sure, you use those labels, but at the end of the day, I'm going to connect with you as a human. Chiron doesn't necessarily promise an easy path, right? No, if you know your Chiron moon, it's not been an easy path, but it definitely promises a meaningful one. Okay. So the next video coming up will be getting to know these big thing that I was like, oh wow. When I was looking at the data, I was like, oh wow. It had me laughing out loud, like, huh. Two of the 10 wealthiest people on the planet share this exact same ascendant in midheaven axis, Cancer rising, Aries midheaven. And so, what that axis tells us about brand identity, public image, and the way you show up in the world is something every whoopiner needs to hear. So that's what I'm going to get into next time. So subscribe so you don't miss it, and come join us in the business astrology hub on School. The link is right here in the description as well. Until next time, trust your chart.